talk to us. Oh man, yo, so we got to go ahead and move on. We appreciate you guys all being here with us. Alex, I don't know if you're still here with us, but I wanted to bring this comment up. Thought the comment of being so close to Natty was referencing my Dukes. Still not over it. My man, I feel for you. I feel for you. Almost got us to the title, man.
So funny.
Yo, appreciate you guys watching. Hey, and speaking of my guy, Alex Loosemore, check us out Saturdays, 10 a.m. Eastern. We do Let's Talk College Football. And recently we have been bringing you up to speed on all the major positions. Who were the top 5 guys? Who are some sleepers? How did last year's players do at said position? And similar to what we did last week on this show, we went into the offense, talked about, what positions we need. One of the things we actually discussed is that for the most part with our offense, we pretty much know the prime positions. Maybe O-line is somewhere we definitely want to focus on, but everything else in our skill position, we're pretty certain on who's going where, and it's really just a depth situation for us on offense. On defense, albeit we did take care of Deron Payne in that extension, and we did get another lineman in, Abdullah. We re-signed some guys, but this is the place where not just this year, but past several years, we have been talking about we need to work on, we need to focus on it. And I mean, let's start right here. A couple years ago, we were terrible. We got top 5 pick. We got Chase Young. Okay. Obviously the rookie of the year, did amazing, 7.5 sacks for us. But like you alluded to earlier, like last week, it wasn't necessarily the sacks, because 7.5 sacks is a fairly pedestrian number, but it was the impact. It was the forced fumbles, the recovered fumbles, the returns for a touchdown, just the threat that he imposed on a defense to where they had to bring in the tight end or the running back to chip him and everything. Unfortunately, with the injury and him kind of having issues with coming back and then finally coming back, it begs the question you have to ask, do we take his 5th-year option? Do we keep him around? We know what they did for Deron Payne, and we know what Ron Rivera said that, we're going to, let's make him earn it kind of deal. I mean, it feels sacrilegious to say, let's make him a trade bait or get him out of here or anything like that. But realistically, like, should we be shopping him, or what do you think?
Yeah, this has become a hot button issue. Sports talk, bloggers, the podcasters, bloggers. Does people blog anymore? But and it's people have all kinds of the opinions on this, and I see both sides of it. Basically, what they're kind of saying is, and this is what the team is saying right now, is do we need to let Chase Young earn it the way we made Deron Payne earn it, and essentially play this year, which would be his 4th year, with a situation where if you produce, we will look into paying you. The only problem with that is they have Montez Sweat on the team already, who is in the last year of his contract. His 5th year is this upcoming season. So you have a chance to have both starting defensive ends, young guys, eligible for free agency if you don't keep him, if you don't pick up his 5th-year option. Now, they have until May, so they have until after the draft. So essentially, we will have a chance to see what happens in the draft, to see is that affecting what they're doing. If it's me, I think you pick it up. And I've got 2 reasons for it. The very first one, the more logical one, is money. Okay. As of today, if you pick up his 5th-year option, he will lock in a contract of $17 million in 2024, the following season. Okay, so this fall is going to be year 4. Year 5, he'll be $17 million. In year 4, he's about 10. His salary moves up to $10 million, then it goes to 17. If you were to allow him to if you don't pick up his 5th-year option, you have the ability to franchise tag him. Okay, you could franchise one of the 2. Montez or Chase. But if you franchise if you franchise Chase Young, it would be, as of today, $21 million. So you're talking a $4 million difference right there in the salary cap. And that's just today. By the time that that happens comes next spring, they could be up to like 23. If you're talking $4 to $6 million, that's a starter. That's a big contributor. That $4 to $6 million is what we were paying Andrew Norwell and Trey Turner to be our starting guards this past year. So if you're talking about an actual starting position, it would make more sense to save the money by picking up his 5th-year option, locking him in at $17 million, and giving yourself a chance to give yourself 2 years to be evaluating. So that right there, from the dollar standpoint, is why I think you should do it. The second reason I think you have to do it is for reputation, franchise value. This guy was a generational pass rush talent. Yes. He looked to be the part his rookie year. He had problems his sophomore year. He had problems with the coaching staff and what they were doing, and they were frustrated with him. But then he got hurt, and he had a really bad knee injury, that way worse than what they led on. And shame on them, shame on Chase Young's camp for making us think that it's only going to be 3 or 4 weeks into the season and he'll be back, when it was way longer than that. So last year was a lost year. So you got to give him a chance to prove himself in 2023. This season, we got to give him a chance, and you need to give him a chance to prove himself in 2024, because this is the number 2 overall pick. What if you let him go? He goes to Montez Sweat gives you 8 to 9 sacks a year. He's a good player. But what if Chase Young becomes Chase Young for somebody else?
Exactly.
You can't take that as a reputation. That right there, Ron, will get you fired.
Right. Absolutely. And then, and I think the other glaring issue is, if you make that move just from a cultural perspective, you might be just torpedoing your shot to get these fans to be on board. We know, we think about your boy, Taylor Heineke. Now, he lacked all the extra talent, but they loved him. And you know who else loved him? Our boy Chase Young. The fans love Chase just as much. Even throughout the injuries, we're all still giving him the benefit of the doubt, because we're like, well, this is that guy. This is the guy that, this is our Bosa, essentially. This is our guy that's supposed to come and do these things. So it frustrates you to think, because it's like you're not getting, from a business standpoint, you're wasting the money. You're not getting anything back from this. He's not really producing. And then, you start going on with different thoughts of it's in his head and what's really happening and this and that. But it's like you said, you have to give him that chance. And then who are we as a team if we're like, oh, we gave up on you after a year, albeit the injury, but that's even worse.
Right.
If you had this injury, you were out, so you couldn't do anything about it. And now all of a sudden, okay, we're just going to cut. That's why I wanted to keep Daron Payne. That's why I think I agree. I want to keep Chase Young, because of the fact that I finally feel like in this day and age, when all you hear about is NIL, all you hear about is transferring, all you hear about is coaches going to different places, Aaron Rodgers, Jets, Russell, the Broncos, you hear about guys moving. One of the things that we're missing out on is the loyalty. You know what I mean? Building that community. You think about those teams in the 70s with the Steelers, those fans knew those players. Now, it was different because they couldn't really go anywhere, but a lot of they stayed there. Just like with us and the Hogs. I met Daryl Green. Daryl Green's wife used to do my older sister's hair. You know what I mean? She went to church with them. I met Art Monk, Ricky Irvin. I met those guys, and they went to community barbershops, community things that were in the community. So we knew them. There's a sense of like, he's like me. Like, there's a feeling, a connection there. And I feel like Chase Young was the stopgap of everything else. Everything before that, when we had Josh Johnson playing, the late Dwayne Haskins was in it. Like, we were really sinking. We were just going downhill. Gruden was our coach. Bringing in the Chase Young was kind of the turn for us, where it was like, even that season was kind of like, oh man, like things were terrible early. And he was one to help pick it up and turn things around for us. I just don't think, especially with Rivera, this being his potential last year, I just don't think he can survive that. Like you were saying, I feel like if you were to get rid of him, get rid of Chase, you might as well get rid of the fans, because I think a lot of the fans would just be like, we're done with you. We're done. And people that really aren't on board with Rivera in the first place. So yeah, I agree that we should keep him. I just that's the other thing. I just don't foresee anything that would be worth potentially sending him out for a draft, free agency, nothing. Like I mean, talk to me. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. It's like I think you got to keep him around. But that brings the question, and this is kind of what started this. Was there was an article that was written that listed the like 5 to 10 players in the NFL that are the most tradable before the draft, and they said Montez Sweat was one of them. So essentially, it's now you also got to be thinking of it. Okay, if we're already thinking we should keep Chase Young around, so we're paying. At one point, we're going to be paying Jonathan Allen 17. We're paying Daron Payne 20. We're paying Chase Young 17. Can we afford to go after Montez Sweat after this season if you are going to keep Chase around? Or let's make Ablo extremely happy. Do we need to be trading him before it's too late? And before the draft is when this is the most value you can get from somebody. Yeah. You know, it was right before this draft. So do we need to be looking into trading Montez Sweat? I want to kick it to you because I think this is a very hard question for you to answer because I know you love these guys.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it'd be harder for me to let go of Chase than would Montez. And the reason being is all I've heard from Montez over the last couple of years, obviously in 2020 was the whole COVID thing. You know, and that really rubbed me the wrong way just because of our coach being so more susceptible because of the cancer. And Montez kind of put his foot down and said, this is what I'm doing. And they're not showing me things. And it really, that really messed with me. So that to me showed a selfish side. Then obviously that second year after 2020, he came in the off season and Montez was talking a whole bunch of, you know, we're going to break the tag team sack record and we're going to do this. And totally bombed. Okay. Now I'll give him credit for what he did this past year because I felt like he showed that he came alive. And that was mainly when Chase was not there. So that was quite interesting, but it was a different coaching. We had Ganina there. Del Rio was kind of getting with, I think we were it was a different mindset as opposed in 2020, it was kind of like you guys free for all. You know, whoever gets to the quarterback will figure it out. Nobody's worrying about pass lanes. And that bit us in the butt in 2021. And then this past year, it's kind of like, okay, how we figured out how to work with each other. How does my rush help you guys elevate your play and vice versa? It's going to be interesting to see Chase bring that in. But as far as with Montez, I kind of feel like with him, I'd be less attached to. If the offer came in for him, I feel like that would be something where somebody would be getting a quality player. And if we were to turn it around and get something on the back end, I would not have as much of an issue with it. Now, part of that goes to some of the guys that we're going to talk about as to where we might draft or things like that. But I think the other part is we know the ceiling of Chase Young. We know how high he could go. We've seen glimpses of some of the things that he can do when 100% healthy. Montez can ball without a doubt. And in all honesty, I don't want to lose any of them. But since you're going to pose the question that I have to pick one or the other, I'm taking Chase. And it's a gamble because it's more on your expectation of his potential, what you expect him to do in the coming years. And Montez, I've seen him over the past 3. I would hate to lose either of them, but Montez, I feel like we could get a better offer right now. And you know, they would be able to come in and contribute right away, as opposed to if we're doing Chase, they still have to see, is he going to pass the physical? Because if you don't pass the physical, it doesn't even matter. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of things, but I would get Montez out and see what we can get, see how high we can get a draft pick, potentially a second rounder or something like that. I mean, I would love to get something like that for him.
Well, you said at the very end, I think that is the most key part, is what we don't know is Chase's health. Yeah. We don't know if this knee injury is going to be something that he just needs time and he'll be back to himself, or is it going to significantly hamper him for the rest of his career? Right. It certainly took away a whole season, and some of it seemed to be mental in there, which was almost even more like concerning if you're getting cleared by the doctors, but you aren't feeling comfortable to play out there. And then the other part that you mentioned was in this season, Montez seemed to really gel with Allen and Payne and understanding he was willing to take a step back on his own stats for the good of the team, where he recognized, well, if I cut inside and you go around me, we get a sack. Or if I come in and get the double team, you're now single teamed and you can make the play. So they work together as a team. So getting rid of that's kind of tough. It's like they gelled well. I'm with you where if you have to pick between one or the other, you would pick Chase right now because of the potential that we want to see, that he hasn't tapped that yet. But honestly, if I'm Ron Rivera, I would, and this would be if Ab is tuning in later on, he'll be, man, if I'm Ron, I would keep them both and let it ride out, because Ron's coaching for his job this year.
Yeah.
So if you're coaching for your job, why don't you put the 4 best guys out there on the field?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because a couple years ago, I also take we took the Pittsburgh Steeler Pittsburgh Steeler Baltimore Ravens route of, we let somebody go in free agency and we drafted his replacement. We let Preston Smith go to the Packers. He signed a $50 million deal. I think his first season, he had close to 12 sacks and 50 tackles. He had a really big impact that first year. We drafted Montez Sweat, who had 8 sacks and not as many tackles, but we felt good about our replacement and we saved money. But Preston had a big season that first year when he left. And so it shows 2 things. One, that you can replace these guys through the draft if you need to, and maybe that is the route we should do as well. But they also can go out and play better than what they did for you, than what your replacement is. So it's sort of you also need to be careful. Is the grass greener by letting them walk because you're saving money? Or is it better to have what you have in-house and be locking up your best set of players? Your top 4 players outside of Terry are the defensive line. And is it best to keep them around as long as you can until you physically can, or if you monetarily cannot keep them around?
Right. And honestly, I mean, that opens up a whole bunch of questions, because then you start asking, 2 years ago, Chase was definitely one of our top 4 players. But then you look at it right now and it's like, I mean, I guess we could say that he is up there if you're going to. But I mean, it's from what he's been able to do, and it's not on him for the injury, but still, best ability is availability. If you're not on the field, I can't, how can I vouch for that? So, it's going to be quite interesting. I like that. If I don't have to choose, Will, I'm going to keep both. I'm going to keep them both and ride it out. But for me, I think it'd be almost easier because of what you said at the end or at the beginning of what you were saying, is that we talked about how the issue was that the D-line was not playing complementary. And then all of a sudden, with injury, Chase was out, you start seeing Sweat and all them do those things and play complementary. But the other part about it is we had a lot of guys that came in to play in the absence of Chase. And they didn't put up, super electrifying numbers and everything, but they contributed and they did enough to at least let the other 3, wreak havoc.
Yeah.
And then it begs the question, because you want to have this, D-line as your studs and everything like that. But then at the same time, why not get not him per se, not Matt Ioannidis, but a contributor of that sort that might get you 5 or 6 sacks, might only get you, 50 or some odd tackles, but get you, 5 or 6 tackles for losses, deflected pass, does the little stuff, the stuff that people are, not in the chat, all the stuff that we used to say about Daron Payne, the stuff that didn't show up in the stat sheet. These guys came in and were able to do that and gelled together. So, I mean, we all want Chase to come back and be able to fit right in and gel with the group. But the fact of the matter is he has been out for the better part of 2 years. And you know what I mean? So it's a gamble. We're trying to figure out where to go. But this is a huge question. And I'm glad you mentioned it. Everybody's discussing it because, like I said before, to some people it's sacrilegious. Some people it's Chase, and you know what I mean? And the rest is Terry, Chase, and the rest, you know what I mean? And I understand it. I absolutely understand it.